The morning was soft and still. Sunlight filtered through the branches of the old maples lining the quiet street. Golden dust floated in the air, catching every movement, every tiny sound. Officer Ryan walked at his usual pace, hands in his pockets, boots brushing the pavement. The city was just waking up. The faint hum of distant traffic, the clink of a newspaper tossed onto a porch, the murmur of early conversations, it all felt gentle, almost cinematic. Then, he saw the dog. A small stray, sitting perfectly still at the curb. Its fur was dusty, a mix of brown and cream, slightly matted from months of wandering. But it wasn't the appearance that caught Ryan's attention. It was the way the dog waited. Attentive, patient, almost serene. The dog lifted its head, tilting it slightly, as if measuring Ryan. Its gaze wasn't pleading. Not at all. There was understanding. A quiet intelligence that made Ryan pause mid-step. For a moment, he considered walking past. He often saw strays, and most days, they faded into the background of the city. But something about this one felt different. The dog shifted, placing its paws neatly beneath it, then nudged a small piece of litter with its nose. Not aggressively, just gently, as if showing him the world, asking him to notice. Ryan slowed. He leaned against his patrol car, feeling an unusual tug at his chest. There was a stillness here, a message in the calm. Something purposeful. The dog's ears flicked. Its eyes never left him. Then, it stood, moving a step closer to the edge of the curb. Its nose pointed subtly toward the alley across the street. Not barking. Not whining. Just guiding. Ryan frowned, uncertainty creeping in. He looked around. The street was empty. Morning light shimmered on the asphalt. The alley was quiet, nondescript. Nothing seemed urgent. And yet, he felt a pulse of something important. Something beyond ordinary. The dog sat again, tail brushing the ground softly, head held high. Its gaze never wavered. It was patient, focused, insistent, without demanding. A silent call. Ryan shifted his weight, taking a careful step forward. The dog followed his movement with perfect synchronization. Every subtle gesture, every tiny motion, felt intentional. Like it was saying, "Notice this. Pay attention. It matters." He whispered under his breath, almost to himself, "What are you trying to tell me?" The dog cocked its head once, then sighed a soft, almost human-like exhale. Ryan's heart gave a little jolt. He'd never felt anything like this before. A simple interaction with a stray, and yet, it carried weight. Emotion. Significance. Ryan reached into his pocket, fingers brushing the cold metal of his keys. He thought about moving along, about ignoring the soft tug he felt. But the dog's eyes held him. Warm, calm, unwavering. He couldn't leave. The city around them seemed to fade. The distant traffic became a soft hum. The light played across the dog's fur, highlighting its gentle frame. Dust motes floated like tiny stars in the golden morning sun. He realized, slowly, that this wasn't a coincidence. The dog had chosen this moment, this place. And somehow, it had chosen him. Ryan took another step toward the alley. The dog's tail wagged just slightly, a subtle gesture that felt like reassurance. It wasn't excitement. Not quite. It was encouragement. He stopped at the mouth of the alley. The shadows were soft, the sunlight spilling like liquid gold across the pavement. He glanced down at the dog. It sat calmly, ears perked, eyes shining with clarity. A quiet wisdom. And then, with the tiniest tilt of its head, it nudged its nose toward the alley again. A gentle prompt. A message waiting to be understood. Ryan exhaled slowly, a mixture of curiosity and wonder settling into him. He couldn't explain it. He couldn't name it. But he knew something was here. Something important. The dog's gaze softened, and Ryan felt the warmth of a connection that needed no words. No rushing. No explanation. Just understanding and trust. And in that quiet, golden moment, he realized, whatever the dog sensed, would change everything. The soft hum of the city returned, distant and gentle. But for Ryan, the world had shifted slightly. A warm mystery had begun. The alley was quiet. Shadows stretched lazily across the walls of brick and concrete. A soft morning breeze carried the faint scent of earth, and the sunlight flickered through a gap in the buildings, painting everything in warm, golden light. Ryan paused at the entrance. His eyes scanned the alley, empty, silent, nothing out of place. Yet the dog didn't hesitate. It stepped forward with calm certainty, tail low but wagging just slightly. Every movement was measured, deliberate. The dog stopped near a small dumpster, sniffed the air, then nudged a loose wooden crate with its nose. It wasn't frantic. It wasn't anxious. It was intentional. Like a teacher pointing a student to the right lesson. Ryan crouched slightly, keeping his distance, studying the dog's behavior. He had spent years on the force, trained to notice subtle cues. But nothing he'd encountered compared to this. The dog wasn't reacting to danger, it was guiding him towards something he couldn't yet see. A soft sigh escaped Ryan's lips. "Okay. I'm watching," he whispered. His voice barely disturbed the warm morning air. The dog moved a few steps forward, stopped, and looked back at him. Eyes calm. Focused. Almost human in their clarity. Ryan understood this wasn't random. The dog wanted him to follow. Slowly, he took another step. Every sound in the alley seemed amplified in that silence. A distant drip of water. A bird calling from a rooftop. The scuff of shoes against concrete. Ryan's heartbeat slowed and quickened at once, caught between wonder and anticipation. The dog paused near a pile of discarded boxes. One box was slightly open. The dog sniffed it carefully, nudged it with its nose again, then sat, looking back at Ryan. Tail wagging lightly. Ryan stepped closer, crouching to examine the box. Inside, he saw a small bundle of cloth, and his pulse quickened slightly, not fear, but curiosity. He reached out gently. The dog tilted its head, observing him with steady eyes, as if to say, "Be careful. Take your time. This is important." The bundle was nothing alarming, just an old coat, a few items left behind. And yet, the dog's insistence made Ryan pause. There was a rhythm to its actions, a message hidden in the calmness. He breathed slowly. "You've got me here for a reason, haven't you?" he murmured. The dog responded with a soft tilt of the head, then nudged the crate again, this time toward the far end of the alley. Ryan followed. Every step felt deliberate, cinematic, like the world had slowed, giving space for observation, reflection, and connection. The dog moved with purpose, stopping at points to sniff the air, occasionally looking back to make sure Ryan was paying attention. The alley ended at a narrow passage between two buildings. Here, the light was softer, almost golden. The dog stopped, sitting squarely in the sunbeam. It looked at Ryan with unwavering focus, tail brushing the concrete lightly, eyes calm but insistent. Ryan crouched again, studying the alley. There was nothing threatening. Nothing out of place, at least to the casual observer. Yet the dog's posture said otherwise. Something awaited discovery, something subtle but significant. He ran a hand over his face, feeling the warmth of the morning sun. The soft rustle of leaves above and the faint hum of the city in the distance grounded him, but didn't distract from the quiet intensity of this moment. Then the dog stood suddenly, ears twitching, nose pointing toward a small gap between two dumpsters. Ryan followed its gaze. He noticed a faint glimmer, a flash of color under the shadow. Something small, almost hidden, but noticeable if you looked closely. The dog moved closer, sniffed, then sat back and looked at Ryan, as if waiting for acknowledgement. Ryan knelt carefully, reaching toward the spot. There was a small, folded note tucked beneath a brick. His fingers trembled slightly as he picked it up. It was old, slightly crumpled. The handwriting was neat, careful. And though the words weren't alarming, the message carried urgency, quiet and subtle, but enough to make Ryan's heart quicken. The dog sat calmly beside him, watching every movement. Tail flicked slowly, eyes steady. It wasn't seeking praise. It wasn't impatient. It simply knew. And Ryan knew that too. For a long moment, they just sat together, man and dog, sunlight spilling over them, the city waking around them. Ryan read the note again. The words were simple, almost mundane, but combined with the dog's guidance, they felt profound. He exhaled slowly. "I don't know how you knew, but thank you," he whispered. The dog tilted its head once, then licked the back of his hand lightly, as if affirming the bond that had quietly formed. Ryan stood slowly, feeling a strange warmth in his chest. This dog, it wasn't just a stray. It was a guide. A messenger. And somehow, it had chosen him to notice, to follow, to understand. The alley, once ordinary, now seemed alive. Light, shadow, scent, and movement were heightened. Every detail mattered. And every detail had been pointed out by this small, quiet creature with a steady gaze. Ryan took a deep breath, exhaling slowly, letting the calm wash over him. The city's noise was still present, but it had softened. The warm light caught the dog's fur, highlighting its soft, purposeful frame. The bond was subtle, but undeniable. The dog glanced up at him one last time before sitting fully, tail curled neatly. Its eyes held a quiet, profound message: this is only the beginning. Pay attention. Follow me, carefully. Ryan nodded. Soft tension lingered in the air, gentle but persistent. A quiet smile appeared on his face. Whatever lay ahead, he wasn't afraid. He was ready to follow. The days that followed were quiet, almost ordinary. Yet for Ryan, nothing felt ordinary anymore. Every morning, he found himself scanning the streets for that same small, watchful figure, the stray dog that had guided him through the alley. The dog appeared almost like clockwork. Sometimes on the corner of Maple Street. Other times near the old bakery. Always calm. Always observing. Always just waiting. Ryan began to notice patterns. The dog didn't wander randomly. Its movements had rhythm, a subtle intuition guiding its steps. It would pause at intersections, tilt its head in a specific direction, or nudge small objects along the way. Nothing frantic. Nothing loud. Just soft, purposeful gestures that demanded attention. He started keeping a small notebook in his patrol car. Observations. Patterns. Times and places. The dog's movements became a quiet puzzle, one he found himself eager to solve. Each day, the city seemed softer, warmer, bathed in light and shadow that felt almost cinematic. On one particular morning, Ryan watched as the dog approached a narrow side street. It stopped, sniffed the air, then glanced back at him, eyes steady, calm, filled with quiet insistence. Ryan followed, curiosity rising like a gentle tide. Every step, every pause, every subtle gesture held meaning. He felt a warmth in his chest, a connection he couldn't explain. This wasn't just about a stray dog. It was about understanding. Trust. Something deeper. The dog paused near a small, abandoned bench. It nudged a folded piece of paper with its nose, then sat back, tail brushing the ground lightly. Ryan approached slowly, mindful not to startle it. The note was brief, a simple message about a forgotten alleyway, a loose railing, a shadow that seemed out of place. Nothing alarming. Yet Ryan's instincts, sharpened by years on the force, told him there was more than met the eye. Something subtle, something easily overlooked, but significant nonetheless. He looked down at the dog. Its eyes met his, steady, patient, full of quiet intelligence. For a moment, Ryan realized how little he truly noticed about the world around him. How easily he walked past details that mattered. And yet, this small, seemingly ordinary creature saw everything. "Are you trying to teach me something?" he asked softly. The dog tilted its head, as if considering the question. Then, in a gesture so slight it might have gone unnoticed by anyone else, it nudged the note again, toward the edge of the bench. Ryan felt a small smile tug at his lips. Every movement was deliberate. Every action intentional. He was learning, slowly, to read the language of this dog, its subtle cues, its quiet intuition, its gentle insistence that he pay attention. Days turned into weeks, and Ryan's curiosity deepened. He began noticing the soft cues the dog offered in other parts of the city. A nudge here, a tilt of the head there. Each moment carried meaning. Each gesture hinted at a story waiting to be uncovered. And with each observation, the bond grew. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't urgent. It was calm, reflective, cinematic. Soft golden light of early mornings, the faint scent of baked bread from the nearby bakery, the hum of distant traffic all became part of the story the dog was guiding him through. Ryan began to anticipate its movements, feeling a strange rhythm in his own steps. He realized the dog wasn't just guiding him toward objects or notes. It was guiding him to notice the world differently, to pause, to observe, to reflect. On a quiet Tuesday, Ryan followed the dog down a narrow alley he had never walked before. The sunlight filtered in patches through the high walls, dust motes dancing like tiny stars. The dog stopped at a small wooden crate, sniffed, then looked at him. Tail flicked softly. Eyes steady. Waiting. Ryan knelt, studying the crate. Inside, nothing alarming, just a bundle of discarded papers, old magazines, some scraps of fabric. Yet the dog's insistence suggested there was something worth his attention. As he examined the papers, a subtle realization dawned on him. The dog wasn't just showing him random objects. It was teaching him observation. Attention. Awareness. A quiet life lesson wrapped in soft, deliberate movements. He leaned back, letting the golden sunlight warm his face. "I see it now," he whispered. "You're not just a guide, you're showing me how to look." The dog tilted its head, ears twitching slightly, as if acknowledging his understanding. Ryan spent hours over the next week observing, following, noting patterns. He realized the dog had a subtle map of the city in its mind, a network of cues, small markers, soft messages left for those who would notice. Each day, he saw more, learned more. The world felt richer, more layered, more alive. By the end of the week, a quiet routine had formed. He'd see the dog. They'd move together through streets and alleys. Notes, small gestures, soft nudges, each one a small discovery, a gentle mystery, a lesson in observation and trust. The bond was deepening, unspoken but unmistakable. Ryan felt a warmth in his chest every time the dog paused, tilted its head, or nudged a note toward him. A connection that needed no words, no fanfare, just understanding, patience, and gentle guidance. One morning, as golden sunlight spilled across the streets, the dog stopped at the base of an old lamppost. It nudged a folded piece of paper toward Ryan. He picked it up carefully. The handwriting was neat, precise. The message simple. And yet, combined with the dog's guidance, it carried weight. Importance. Subtle urgency. Ryan exhaled slowly. He realized that he was no longer just observing the dog. He was learning from it. Trusting it. Following its quiet intuition with calm attention and respect. The dog sat beside him, tail curled neatly, eyes calm but knowing. The city around them continued its slow rhythm, hum of traffic, faint footsteps, distant birdsong, all soft, warm, cinematic. And in that quiet moment, Ryan understood something profound. The dog wasn't just a stray. It was a teacher. A guide. A companion who showed him how to see, how to notice, how to connect. The mystery remained. The notes, the gestures, the soft nudges, there was more to uncover. But Ryan felt ready. Attuned. Connected. The dog looked up at him, steady and calm. Eyes full of quiet intelligence. And Ryan knew, this was only the beginning. The morning air was warm, carrying the faint scent of fresh bread from the bakery down the street. Sunlight spilled over the pavement, painting long golden streaks along the alley walls. Ryan walked slowly, eyes scanning for the familiar figure. The dog appeared almost instantly, sitting near the corner as if it had been waiting for him all along. Its fur glistened in the sun, soft and gentle. There was no urgency in its movements, only calm, quiet purpose. Ryan slowed his pace, feeling the familiar tug in his chest. Each day, following the dog became less about curiosity and more about connection. Something in the small, steady presence beside him felt grounding, reassuring. A reminder that even in a bustling city, quiet moments could hold profound meaning. The dog moved ahead a few steps, then stopped, glancing back at Ryan with steady eyes. Tail flicked softly, ears alert but relaxed. It nudged a small scrap of paper toward his feet. He picked it up, unfolding it carefully. The note was brief, almost mundane, look beyond what's obvious. Ryan smiled softly. "You're teaching me patience, aren't you?" he murmured, voice barely above a whisper. The dog cocked its head, eyes calm, as if acknowledging the thought. They moved together down the alley. Ryan noticed the subtle ways the dog guided him, pausing at certain spots, nudging objects, tilting its head towards small details he might have overlooked. The gestures were quiet, deliberate, and full of intention. He realized the dog was helping him see more than the physical world. It was teaching him to notice nuance, to read the city like a living, breathing story. The soft light glinting off windows, the faint scent of flowers and hidden planters, the rhythm of footsteps echoing from distant sidewalks, all these details became more vivid when observed through the dog's presence. Ryan began talking to the dog more often, quietly. "I notice it now, the little things you show me," he said, brushing a hand over its soft fur. "I notice everything." The dog leaned slightly into his touch, tail wagging just a fraction, eyes steady and warm. Over the next few days, their routine deepened. Morning walks became shared rituals. They moved through alleys and streets with a subtle rhythm: stop, observe, pause, reflect. The city was no longer a blur of routine traffic and hurried pedestrians. It was alive, layered, cinematic, illuminated by small gestures, subtle guidance, and quiet intuition. One afternoon, Ryan followed the dog to a small, forgotten courtyard behind an old building. Sunlight filtered through the lattice of vines climbing the walls, casting intricate shadows on the cobblestone. The dog sat beside a broken bench, nudging a small envelope toward Ryan with its nose. Inside was a simple note: "Patience reveals truth." Ryan's smile widened. He crouched, brushing the dog's ears softly. "You're more than a guide," he said, voice soft and reflective. "You're a friend." The dog tilted its head, tail flicking lightly. In that gentle gesture, Ryan felt the bond deepen, silent, unspoken, yet undeniable. Days passed, each encounter building the quiet rhythm of trust. Ryan learned to anticipate the dog's movements. When it paused at a corner, he paused. When it sniffed the edge of a box, he leaned closer. Each action became a dance of observation, patience, and understanding. The dog never rushed. It never demanded attention. It offered guidance, small nudges, and gentle encouragement. Ryan realized that the connection wasn't about him leading, or the dog leading, it was about moving together in quiet harmony, noticing the world in each other. One evening, golden light spilling across the city streets, Ryan found himself standing beside the dog at the top of a small incline. They overlooked the quiet city block below, shadows stretching, the air warm and still. The dog's eyes held his, calm, knowing, steady. He knelt beside it, letting his hand rest lightly on its fur. "I understand you now," he whispered. "I see what you want me to notice." The dog leaned slightly into his touch, tail flicking softly. It wasn't an acknowledgement that needed words. The bond itself was the language. For the first time, Ryan felt truly present. The soft tension of mystery and curiosity had settled into a gentle warmth. Each day with the dog revealed more than hidden notes or nudges, it revealed patience, trust, and quiet joy. That night, Ryan returned to his apartment with a lingering sense of calm. He glanced at the small notebook he had begun keeping. Observations, notes, patterns, they were no longer just a record of the dog's guidance. They were a reflection of the bond forming between man and dog, a story unfolding slowly, gently, beautifully. He realized that following the dog had changed him. He noticed the small things in life again, the way sunlight bounced off windows, the soft rustle of leaves in a breeze, the tiny gestures of strangers on the street. The dog had shown him the world in a way he hadn't seen since childhood. The next morning, Ryan and the dog met at their usual corner. The city was bathed in warm light. Pedestrians passed by, oblivious to the small story unfolding on the quiet street. The dog nudged a folded piece of paper toward him. He picked it up carefully. The note was simple, yet profound. Connection reveals purpose. Ryan exhaled slowly, feeling a deep warmth in his chest. The connection he had forged with this small, wise creature went beyond guidance. It was trust, companionship, and understanding. It was a quiet bond that needed no words, no fanfare, just patience and presence. The dog looked up at him, steady and calm, eyes filled with soft intelligence. Ryan smiled, reaching down to scratch behind its ears. They stood together in the morning light, the city humming softly around them, golden and warm. And in that quiet moment, Ryan realized that the bond they shared wasn't just about curiosity or discovery. It was about heart, presence, connection. And whatever lay ahead, he knew they would face it together. The city had grown softer in Ryan's eyes. Even familiar streets felt new, lit with golden sunlight and shadow, alive with detail he had never noticed before. Each morning, he sought the small, quiet presence that had become a constant in his routine. The dog appeared almost immediately, sitting on the corner of Cedar Street, fur glinting in the soft light. Its eyes held that same calm intelligence, steady and patient. It tilted its head as Ryan approached, tail flicking softly, a gentle prompt to follow. They walked together down a narrow alley Ryan had passed hundreds of times but never noticed in detail. Sunlight filtered through gaps between buildings, illuminating dust motes that floated like tiny stars in the morning air. Every movement of the dog felt deliberate, each pause weighted with meaning. Near the far end of the alley, the dog stopped abruptly, sniffing the air, then nudged a small, rusted box toward Ryan. He knelt slowly, brushing aside fallen leaves to examine it. Inside were a few small items, discarded papers, an old scarf, a forgotten lunch bag. Ordinary. Unremarkable. And yet, the dog's insistence suggested otherwise. It was guiding him to notice something subtle. Something important. Ryan's gaze swept the alley carefully. Shadows, sunlight, the soft hum of the city beyond, everything seemed heightened. Then he saw it, a narrow gap between two crates, partially hidden, catching sunlight in a strange way. The dog nudged the closer crate lightly, tilting its head toward the opening. Heart beating softly, Ryan crouched to investigate. Inside, partially concealed beneath discarded boxes, was a small, makeshift shelter. Faded blankets, a worn jacket, and a pair of tiny shoes suggested someone had been living there quietly, unseen. The dog sat patiently beside him, tail brushing the ground. Its eyes were steady, calm, almost reflective, as if urging him to notice not just the objects, but the story they told. Ryan took a slow breath. The shelter was empty now, but traces of life lingered, carefully folded items, signs of thought, subtle marks that told of someone's presence. The dog's gentle nudges had guided him to this hidden corner, revealing what had been quietly overlooked. He knelt beside the shelter, touching the edge of the blanket softly. "You brought me here for a reason," he whispered. The dog tilted its head, tail flicking once. "Not urgent. Not demanding. Just present, calm, patient." Ryan began to notice the small details, the footprints in the dirt, faint impressions of hands on the crates, a forgotten cup with dried remnants of tea. Each item carried meaning, a quiet story waiting to be understood. And the dog had led him here, patiently, gently, step by step. For a long moment, they simply observed together. The sun moved across the alley, casting shifting patterns on the walls. Dust motes floated lazily through the light. The dog's presence was grounding, a silent reminder that this discovery wasn't about fear or danger, but about attention, care, and understanding. Ryan exhaled slowly. He realized that the dog's guidance wasn't random. Every subtle nudge, every tilt of the head, every pause had been intentional, leading him to notice what mattered. He looked down at the small animal, eyes steady and intelligent. "I see it now," he whispered. "I see the story you've been pointing me toward." The dog wagged its tail slightly, brushing against his leg. No words were necessary. The trust, the guidance, the quiet insistence, they spoke louder than anything could. He began arranging the items more carefully, noticing details he might have overlooked before. A folded note under the jacket. Small markings on the floor of the shelter. Each observation deepened his understanding of the person who had made this hidden space their home. The dog sat quietly, tail curling around its paws, eyes calm but knowing. It wasn't pushing him, rushing him, or drawing attention to itself. It was merely guiding, showing, waiting. A gentle, intuitive presence that encouraged observation and reflection. Ryan felt the soft warmth of connection deepen. He realized that this small creature had been quietly teaching him a lesson in presence, attention, and empathy. Each gesture carried meaning. Each pause carried significance. The dog was a guide not just to objects, but to understanding the world differently, more thoughtfully, more humanely. As the sunlight shifted, Ryan leaned back, letting the warmth touch his face. He looked at the dog. "I don't know how you do it," he said softly. "But you've led me here for a reason. And I trust you." The dog gave a faint sigh, tail brushing the ground lightly. It nudged the note once more, a quiet encouragement. Ryan picked it up, unfolding it carefully. The message was simple, almost understated: pay attention. Notice what is unseen. He smiled. The gentle reveal had begun. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't urgent. It was quiet, subtle, cinematic, a soft unveiling of a story hidden in plain sight. And the dog had been the guide every step of the way. The bond between them deepened further. Trust, understanding, and quiet joy filled the alley. The dog had shown him the hidden story of someone who had been quietly living unnoticed, overlooked, yet alive in the folds of the city. Ryan rose slowly, brushing dust from his hands. He glanced at the dog. Its gaze was steady, warm, and calm. The sunlight played across its fur, highlighting the gentle purpose in every movement. He knew this was just the beginning. There was more to uncover, more to notice, more lessons to learn. And yet, even in the quiet revelation of this moment, there was profound satisfaction. The dog had guided him here not through urgency or fear, but through quiet intuition, gentle nudges, and subtle presence. It was cinematic. It was warm. It was full of heart. Ryan exhaled slowly, feeling the soft tension release in a wave of calm. He crouched again, brushing the dog's ears softly. "Thank you," he whispered. "For showing me." The dog leaned slightly into his touch, tail flicking softly, a simple affirmation of the bond they shared. As they stepped out of the alley, sunlight spilling over the streets, Ryan felt a quiet sense of purpose settle in his chest. The gentle reveal had begun. The story was unfolding. And he was no longer just an observer. He was a participant. Guided by trust, curiosity, and the quiet wisdom of a small, extraordinary dog. The city was quiet that morning, draped in soft golden light. Ryan walked slowly, each step deliberate, scanning for the familiar figure that had become a constant in his life. The stray dog appeared almost immediately, tail low but wagging gently, eyes calm and knowing. They moved together down familiar streets, yet each corner seemed alive with subtle detail, sunlight glinting off windows, shadows stretching across walls, the faint scent of flowers from hidden planters. Ryan noticed everything now, attuned to the quiet rhythm of the city, and to the quiet rhythm of the dog guiding him. They arrived at a narrow alley Ryan had observed many times before. The dog paused near a small gap between crates, nudging the ground gently with its nose. Ryan crouched slowly, following the subtle cue. Something was here, he could feel it, like a heartbeat beneath the stillness of the morning. Inside the gap, partially hidden under a worn blanket, he saw it, a small bundle of clothes and shoes, arranged as though someone had just stepped away. And then he noticed the faint imprint of small footprints in the dust. His chest tightened. The presence had been real. Someone had been here, quietly, living unnoticed in the folds of the city. The dog sat beside him, tail brushing the ground, eyes calm but insistent. Ryan felt a swell of emotion, a mixture of curiosity, concern, and awe. This wasn't just about observation anymore. This was about life. And the dog had led him here. He leaned closer, brushing aside a few leaves, revealing a small, folded note beneath the blanket. The handwriting was delicate, careful, almost trembling. Ryan's pulse quickened as he unfolded it. The message was simple: please, help if you can. His breath caught. It wasn't dramatic, not cinematic in a Hollywood sense. It was real. Human. Quiet. Vulnerable. And the dog had been guiding him here all along. Every subtle nudge, every tilt of the head, every pause, it had led to this moment. Ryan knelt beside the bundle, soft morning light washing over him. His hands trembled slightly as he picked up a small pair of shoes, noticing the careful folds of the blankets. The attention to detail, the quiet order, it revealed a story of survival, of dignity preserved even in hardship. The dog leaned against his leg gently, tail flicking, eye steady. It was as if it understood the weight of the moment. That small presence had been the guide, the messenger, the silent connector between him and the life that had been quietly struggling in plain sight. Ryan exhaled slowly, letting the reality of the discovery settle in. I see now, he whispered, voice catching slightly. You brought me here for them. For this moment. The dog tilted its head, soft and calm, tail flicking lightly. No words. No urgency. Just presence. He spent the next hour observing, documenting, and understanding the small details. There were tiny markings on the walls, faint traces of footprints, signs of daily routines that spoke of resilience. Every small gesture, every subtle trace, told a story of someone living unnoticed yet remarkably intact. Ryan felt a quiet swell of emotion rise in his chest. Gratitude. Sadness. Compassion. And above all, awe at the dog that had guided him to notice, to act, to see beyond the surface. The lessons in observation and attention had led to something deeply meaningful. He straightened slowly, brushing the dog's ears softly. We need to help, he murmured. The dog leaned slightly into the touch, tail flicking softly. Not urging. Not demanding. Just offering comfort and reassurance. Ryan pulled out his phone, calling a local shelter and briefly explaining the situation. Warm light spilled across the alley as he spoke, dust motes dancing in the sunbeams. Every detail felt heightened now: sound, smell, light, presence. The city had become cinematic, alive with meaning, and the dog had been the guide through it all. When the call ended, Ryan sat quietly for a moment, letting the significance sink in. He glanced at the dog, whose steady gaze seemed to say, "This is why we came here. This is why I brought you." A soft warmth settled in his chest. The emotional turning point wasn't dramatic, wasn't loud. It was quiet, subtle, cinematic, the realization that the dog's gentle guidance had led him to a life that needed noticing, attention, and care. He crouched again, brushing his hand over the dog's soft fur. You saved more than just their story, he whispered. You saved a moment of life, of dignity, of hope. The dog leaned gently into the touch, tail flicking in soft rhythm. For the first time, Ryan felt the full weight of the bond between them. It was no longer about observation or curiosity. It was about connection, purpose, and quiet heroism. And it was emotional, warm, and profoundly human. The alley was no longer just an alley. It was a stage for empathy, trust, and quiet guidance. The dog had shown him how to notice what others overlooked, how to act when the world seemed indifferent, and how to connect without words. As they walked back toward the street, sunlight spilling over the buildings, Ryan felt a gentle shift in his perspective. The city was the same. The people moved along their routines. And yet, everything felt different. He had seen life through the eyes of someone who noticed. through the heart of a small, extraordinary dog. And in that quiet, cinematic morning, Ryan knew that the emotional turning point wasn't just about discovery, it was about awareness, presence, and connection. A moment of understanding that would shape the rest of his days. The dog glanced up at him, eyes steady, tail flicking softly. Ryan smiled, brushing behind its ears. They had reached a threshold, a point where curiosity turned to empathy, observation became action, and gentle guidance led to meaningful discovery. The city hummed around them, distant and soft. And Ryan knew, the story was far from over. The heart of the mystery, the full depth of the truth, was still waiting to be revealed. The morning was gentle, filled with warm sunlight spilling across the quiet city streets. Ryan walked slowly, the small dog at his side, tail low but flicking softly, ears alert, eyes steady. The bond between them had grown quiet, unspoken, yet undeniable. They returned to the alley where the dog had first led him to the hidden shelter. Ryan knelt beside the blankets, brushing dust from the edges, examining the small bundle of personal items left behind. His heart felt tight in a way he hadn't expected, full of empathy, warmth, and awe. Then he noticed the small shoes tucked carefully beneath the blankets. Tiny, worn, with faint scuffs from use. His pulse quickened, not from fear, but from understanding. Someone had been living here quietly, unseen, surviving through hardship with dignity intact. And the dog had guided him to this truth. Ryan lifted the folded note again, reading it slowly. "Please, help if you can." The handwriting was delicate, careful. The message simple. Yet in combination with the dog's guidance, it carried profound meaning. This was someone reaching out for care. Someone whose life had been quietly overlooked. The dog nudged the blanket softly with its nose, then sat back, tail brushing the ground. Its eyes met Ryan's, calm, knowing, patient. A quiet insistence. See it. Understand it. Act. Ryan exhaled slowly. "I understand now," he whispered. "You weren't just showing me objects. You were showing me life." He looked around the alley carefully. Dust motes floated in the sunlight, tiny details that he might have overlooked before, the faint outline of footprints, subtle impressions of daily routines, signs of resilience and care. Every small movement, every gesture of survival told a story that words could barely capture. The dog moved closer, nudging a small, folded photograph with its nose. Ryan picked it up carefully. A young child, smiling, hair messy, eyes bright and full of life despite the worn clothes. The warmth of that simple image hit him unexpectedly. Tears pricked the corners of his eyes, unbidden, as he realized the depth of the story this dog had led him to uncover. The person in this family had been living quietly, surviving with dignity, and now Ryan had the chance to make a difference. He crouched beside the dog, brushing its ears softly. "You saved them," he whispered. "You guided me to them, when no one else would have noticed." The dog leaned into his hand, tail flicking slowly. No fanfare. No dramatic gesture. Just calm presence and trust. Ryan reached for his phone, calling a local outreach center. Warm light spilled across the alley, illuminating dust motes like tiny stars. Every movement felt cinematic, imbued with meaning. Every gesture of the dog carried weight. Every detail mattered. As he spoke with the center, he described the location, the items, and the subtle cues the dog had provided. The voice on the other end was gentle, compassionate, affirming that help would arrive. Ryan glanced at the dog, whose eyes held steady warmth. The guidance had been perfect. The realization struck him fully. This small, quiet creature had not only noticed what humans overlooked, but had led into action, without urgency, without demand, only through gentle intuition and presence. It was profound. Emotional. Heart-touching. When the call ended, Ryan and the dog waited together in the alley. The sunlight shifted across the walls, shadows lengthening softly. The air carried the faint scent of city streets waking to morning routines. The dog sat, calm, serene, its gaze steady. Ryan brushed its fur lightly. "You're extraordinary," he whispered. "You show me how to notice, how to care, how to connect." The dog leaned slightly into the touch, tail flicking, eyes full of quiet intelligence. Moments later, a social worker arrived quietly, carrying gentle supplies and a warm smile. Ryan stepped back, letting the dog remain at his side. The worker examined the area, understanding immediately the subtle signs that Ryan had documented. "This is remarkable," the social worker said softly. "No one would have found this without your careful observation, and without your companion's guidance." Ryan smiled, glancing down at the dog. It tilted its head, tail brushing against his leg, calm and patient. The dog had led him to a life quietly hidden, a story unseen. And now, thanks to its quiet intuition, that life would be cared for. The worker began arranging blankets, noting the child's small shoes, gathering the items. Ryan knelt beside the dog, brushing a hand over its ears. "You did this," he whispered. "You made this possible." The dog sat quietly, tail curling around its paws, eyes steady. It wasn't seeking praise. It didn't need acknowledgement. Its purpose had been fulfilled, silently, with grace. Ryan felt a warm, profound sense of completion. The emotional crescendo, the moment the dog's subtle guidance had revealed its heart-touching truth, was soft, gentle, and deeply moving. It wasn't cinematic in the dramatic sense, but in the warmth of connection, in the quiet revelation of life's unseen stories. He took a deep breath, letting the calm wash over him. Sunlight spilled across the alley, glinting off the dog's fur, highlighting its gentle purpose. Dust motes danced lazily through the beams, tiny witnesses to the quiet heroism of intuition and care. Ryan whispered softly, "Thank you. Truly, thank you." The dog leaned slightly into his hand, tail flicking, eyes calm and warm. The bond between them, built through patience, observation, and trust, had culminated in a gentle, life-changing revelation. For a long moment, Ryan simply observed the alley, the sunlight, the soft presence of the dog. The story of a life quietly overlooked had been revealed. A small, extraordinary creature had guided him to understanding, empathy, and action. And in that soft, cinematic light, Ryan realized something deeper. The world was full of quiet mysteries, gentle truths, and unseen stories. All it took was attention, trust, and the patience to follow a guide. The dog's gaze met his one last time before stepping slightly closer, tail brushing against his leg. It had done what it needed to do. The heart-touching truth had been revealed. Ryan exhaled slowly, feeling the warmth settle in his chest. The emotional turning point had passed. Now came the quiet relief, the fulfillment of trust, and the profound gratitude of a life touched without words.